in the Democratic primary for U.S. Senate in Texas. We'll discuss with Houston Public Media politics and government reporter Andrew Schneider. I'm Ernie Manous. Also, Party Politics co-host Brandon Rottinghaus is back with another episode of Texperts, exploring the county attorney's role in the election process. Plus, we'll also hear Frank and Celeste's conversation with comedian Mae Martin, who has a show this Friday at the Cullen Performing Arts Center. And as always, we want to hear from you. Give us a call or text us at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is testifying before House lawmakers investigating the federal government's handling of investigations and prosecutions of Jeffrey Epstein, the wealthy businessman and convicted sex offender who died in a New York jail in 2019. Clinton's deposition this hour in New York is happening behind closed doors. In her opening statement, she accused congressional Republicans of waging a fishing expedition. She reiterated that she had no knowledge of Epstein's crimes, does not recall encountering him, never flew on his plane or visited his island, home, or offices. Clinton accuses her critics of failing to force other political leaders to testify under oath, including President Trump. Former President Bill Clinton is scheduled to testify tomorrow. The Oversight Committee chair, James Comer, had threatened to charge the couple with contempt if they failed to be deposed. Earlier, Comer referenced an NPR investigation that found the Justice Department withheld some Epstein files related to allegations that President Trump sexually abused a minor in the 1980s.
We're looking into the accusation by the NPR. We don't know the answer to that. We know what the administration says. We're still looking to get a definitive answer on that. But look, let's just be realistic here. If you go by a lot of what the Democrats have said, you had Jasmine Crockett accuse Lee Zeldin of taking donations from Jeffrey Epstein. It was the wrong Jeffrey Epstein.
Trump has denied accusations against him and has categorically denied having any knowledge, that is, of Epstein's crimes. The U.S. is engaging in a third round of negotiations today to convince Iran to halt its uranium enrichment. The talks in Geneva are indirect. Oman is mediating. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has ordered an unusually large military presence in the Middle East. Jane Araf is following developments from Jordan.
These U.S. threats against Iran and probable Iranian retaliation, if that does happen, have raised what seems to be a very real risk of a wider war. Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke to reporters late Wednesday, and he said he didn't know if today's talks were the key for a decision on military action, but he did add this.
I would say that the Iranian insistence on not discussing ballistic missiles is a big, big problem.
So in addition to uranium enrichment being discussed, the U.S. is demanding that Iran give up ballistic weapons as well.
Jane Araf reporting from Amman, Jordan. Services will be held across the country starting today in Chicago for the late civil rights leader, Reverend Jesse Jackson. Memorial events are also scheduled in Washington, D.C. and South Carolina. The two-time presidential candidate died last week at the age of 84. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. The Houston ISD Board of Managers is scheduled to vote tonight on Superintendent Mike Miles' recommendation to close 12 schools in the district. Miles, who is state-appointed, says aging infrastructure and years of enrollment declines make the closures necessary. News 88.7's Bianca Seward has more.
It's been just 2 weeks since Miles made the major announcement, and in that time, parents and public school advocacy organizations quickly put together several small protests hoping to stop the board from approving the closures. Under the current state takeover, the elected board has been sidelined, and these decisions are being made by state-appointed managers. Many parents from the affected schools, like Vianney Torres, say they felt blindsided by the news. Torres has 2 kids at Port Houston Elementary.
Devastated. Those are schools that are here in the community, and those are predominantly Hispanic communities. This is a lower income area, so I feel like it's an attack to us.
HISD began surveying teachers last week to see where they may want to be relocated. If the board approves the closures, campuses would be shut down on June 4th. I'm Bianca Seward, News 88.7.
Monday marks 190 years of Texas's independence from Mexico. On March 2nd, 1836, dozens of Texans went to the town of Washington on the Brazos to sign the Texas Declaration of Independence. Historians are trying to make the town a heritage destination. Adam Arnold is an interpreter there.
You have to know where you come from. If you don't know where you come from, you can't make good decisions about where you're going.
This weekend, Washington on the Brazos will hold a celebration for the anniversary. Hear more about its significance and the 1836 convention that was held there coming up this afternoon on News 88.7 In Depth during All Things Considered. Houston firefighters have taken away some resources dedicated to fighting a wildfire burning near Greens Bayou in northeast Houston. The blaze that began Saturday is now 90% contained. The Houston Fire Department says that moisture in the air helped prevent the fuel from igniting further. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, investing in creative thinkers and problem solvers who help people, communities, and the planet flourish. More information is available at hewlett.org.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Oh, if only that were true. Today I'm flying solo again, and Frank and Celeste have the day off. But fear not, we have plenty to talk about. Wonderful guests. But in these particular situations, I need you to chime in even more. So remember, our phone number, 713-440-8870. You can call and join the conversation on any of the topics we're discussing today. You are the people that we do this for. What do we say? This is where Houston talks. So get talking to us. Okay, what else can I tell you? We're on YouTube, so you can join the YouTubers over there. They're watching. They're always a great group of folks, and you may want to join into that. It's a whole other show going on over there, and we love them. What else? How about the weather? I'm going to try this. Frank's not here, but here's my weather. It's cloudy with a high of between 80, about 82, with a low tonight of 65. How does that sound? Currently, it's 75 degrees. Frank's job safe. I can tell that. Okay, coming up on the show today, we're going to have more with Texperts. We're going to hear about the role of the county attorney exactly in elections to understand that better. We're going to take a visit to the Bryan Museum, find out everything that's going on down there. In Galveston, we got a lot of cool news items coming at us and a heavy slant into the world of politics. We're in early voting already. So I'm going to jump right into the headlines because I got a great guest sitting here with me to talk about it. A new poll shows Dallas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett with a double-digit lead over Austin State Representative James Talarico in the Democratic primary for U.S. Senate in Texas. According to the latest survey from the University of Texas Political Project, Crockett leads 56% to 44% among likely Democratic voters. The poll, though, was conducted February 2nd through the 16th, right before the much-debated Talarico-Colbert interview. It has a margin of error of plus or minus 5 points. It also found Crockett was especially strong with support from black voters, while Talarico had a narrow edge among white voters, while Hispanic voters were slightly in the Crockett column. Early voting for the March 3rd primary is already underway, and both campaigns are making their final appeals to Democratic voters ahead of next week's final contest. Joining me here in the studio to talk about all of this and more is HPM's politics and government reporter, Andrew Schneider. Andrew, welcome to the program.
Good to be here, Ernie.
I also want to remind folks, what are your thoughts on this poll? And what do you think about Crockett pulling away? Or are those numbers already outdated? Let us know what you think. 713-440-8870. 8870. Andrew, first thing we talked about when you mentioned this to me yesterday was the fact when it actually got taken, because that's so important, especially in a time like this.
Right. There's really no way to predict what could wind up upsetting the basic assumptions that you're making in a poll. Obviously, there was no way the people conducting this poll could have known what was happening at the Late Show with Stephen Colbert. When I spoke with Joshua Blank, who's the research director at the Texas Politics Project, he said, in effect, there are so many people who saw the unaired interview on YouTube. There's no way that it could not affect the primary. The question is by how much.
And folks were talking in that one interview that was then blocked and all the news circus that followed around it. Didn't he raise like $2.5 million in 24 hours? So definitely there was something happening because of that. Exactly,
yes. And the question becomes where that money is being raised and how much of it can translate into votes. And this was obviously an interview that was meant to be aired nationally. It's been viewed nationally. So some of that money could be coming from people out of state who can't vote in the election.
It seemed as though before Crockett got into the race, of course, Talarico seemed like it was going to be somewhat of an easy street for him, I would almost say. Jasmine Crockett got in, and it seemed like she has slowly built momentum going. She, of course, had name recognition, if not just within the state, across the nation. Do you think, though, he can pull forward enough with that wide a margin at this point?
It's difficult to say. Talarico's released his own internal polling, which was also conducted before the unaired interview was supposed to hit TV screens, which showed him in the lead. It's always a challenge to figure out how much you can rely on those candidate-generated polls. Right. But I mean, one thing that's worth remembering just in terms of the trend in polling was that Jasmine Crockett was ahead in the polls even before she entered the primary back in December. Before that point, Talarico was relatively even with Colin Allred, who left the race when Crockett decided that she was going to get in. So it's really difficult to tell at this point. The one thing that you can say for certain is that Talarico had less of a name recognition advantage than Crockett did, right, and that may be erased at this point.
So there was the whole issue that went on right before this, and this, I think, probably impacted the poll, the concern about the blogger who said she talked to Talarico, and Talarico said about Allred not being the greatest candidate. That's not the words he used, according to this blogger. That had a lot of impact, that made a big social sensation when that happened. That falls right in the beginning of this poll being taken. That was the big talking point. Then you get the Colbert thing, which is the other one that slants the scale. So it's fascinating to me how stories in social media and online can blow up and can shift elections so widely.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth noting, I mean, what Talarico's response was to that. I mean, he qualified, he said in response, he wasn't talking about, he wasn't calling Allred a mediocre candidate. He said that he conducted his campaign.
If I remember correctly, the comment was made that he said he had entered this race expecting to go against a mediocre black man, not an accomplished or successful or however he worded it,
and
black woman.
What Talarico said in response was, that wasn't what I said. I said something to the effect of, he was criticizing Allred's campaign against Cruz as having been conducted in a mediocre fashion. But you're right. I mean, the impact of social media, the ability of social media to impact a race even at this late stage is a fascinating subject. And it plays into the trends that we've been seeing ever since late January with the race, which had been conducted in a relatively courteous fashion up until that point, has gone severely negative. Right. Maybe not to the level that we're seeing on the Republican side, but Talarico has been releasing ad after ad, a lot of which has been, or rather, excuse me, I should qualify this. A super PAC that has aligned itself with Talarico has unleashed an ad campaign that basically questions whether Talarico, whether Crockett is electable in a general election against any of the Republican candidates.
I want to talk more about that. I want to remind everyone the number here, 713-440-8870. You're going to need to pop on your headphones right now because William from Galveston is on the line. William, what's on your mind today?
Hello, Ernie. Thank you for taking my call. I'm a political independent, but I have not really found the capacity to back any of the GOP candidates or incumbents in our state. So I will be voting for whichever of the two Democrat senator candidates wins this election. My own perspective, and I'm not a political wonk, so I don't put too much weight on my opinion, but my opinion is that it's probably more likely that Crockett will win the Democratic nomination, and it would be much more likely that Talarico would actually win a general election in the fall. We haven't had a Democrat win a statewide election since 1994, and I think Talarico, especially as someone who works across the aisle legislatively and who speaks in terms of bringing people together, probably is less red meat exciting to the Democrat partisans, but would be much more likely to be appealing to the general population. That's my comment.
William, thank you for that. It also mirrors another comment that came in online from my British computer guy who says, I think it was predicted that Jasmine Crockett might do better in this election, but that she would have a harder time winning in the midterm itself. Andrew, let me ask you this, and William, thank you for calling. When this conversation, when this school of thought is brought up, it's in this particular race, it's getting pulled into terms of racism and in some ways almost bigotry against, because they're saying a black woman can't do what a white man can. Is there a way to separate race out of that conversation and talk about what we see trend-wise in the state? Or is this school of thought that a lot of people have outdated at this point in voting trends we've seen?
I think it's really difficult to separate them out in a state like Texas, where, and this is something that we saw play out in the fight over redistricting last year. Mm-hmm. The whole question over, what is partisan, redistricting for a partisan advantage versus what is racial gerrymandering. When you have, the black population of the state registered much more heavily not registered, because we don't have voter registration. We don't have party voter registration in Texas. But when you have voter participation much more intensely on one side than the other, then that can tend to get tied up in the whole situation. I will say, and this was a point that you made earlier. There were two demographics that Crockett demonstrated to have a significant advantage over Talarico in the most recent Texas Politics Project survey. That was with black voters and that was with women. And mm-hmm. those tend to be the most reliable participants in Democratic primaries. Whether that translates to participation in the general election is another question.
I want to grab another call, but I know there's a couple other things we want to hit on before we have to move on from this segment. So let's grab Betty from the Heights at 713-440-8870. Betty, what's on your mind?
Hi. The polling numbers that you're citing are outdated.
Right.
And, of course, as we all know, they were taken before Talarico's interview on Colbert.
Right.
Public policy polling is out this morning with new numbers showing Talarico at 48%. Congresswoman Crockett at 42% and about 10% undecided. So,
remind me again, which poll is this?
It's public policy polling.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I was concerned, and as we were talking about a moment ago, because moments in social media, in news, in the zeitgeist can shift polling so quickly these days. It's hard when traditional polling is taken and it happens, and then something like the Late Show event happens. It can sway things and shift them.
Yeah, and there's always a big question that becomes involved. Once you get to a certain point relative to the election, is the polling itself influencing people's voting
right.
patterns?
Yeah. Betty, thank you very much for calling. I've mentioned before that I started out in this business at NBC in election and news polling, and our boss used to tell us there, 2 weeks before an election, he could give you the answer to who was going to win by, I want to say, like 0.1% of vote, unless something catastrophic happened. And he's like, in those moments when a big story breaks, when a piece of information becomes suddenly relevant, it so quickly can sway everything. And we're seeing that go back and forth here. It's going to make for an interesting election night. And I say that because you and I are going to be live on air on election night starting at 8 p.m. right here on News 88.7.
That's right.
We're going to be watching early returns as they come in. Quickly speaking of early returns, one thing that gets released on election night is the early vote, and the mail-in votes are coming in. What can you tell people about mail-in voting?
There were some policy changes at the Postal Service, one in April of last year, the other on Christmas Eve, that basically add at least a day to the time between a mail-in ballot is sent and when it receives the postmark that it needs to be legally admissible in the state. In order to count, the ballot needs to be postmarked by I think it's like 7 p.m. On election day itself.
But then it still needs to get in by the next day to the county, correct?
Right, but the problem is on the way that the rule changes are going to affect. You could mail a ballot at your local post office, then it has to be sent to a regional processing center, and because the number of pickups per day has been reduced, that could wind up taking an extra day. And at this point in the campaign, that could be really significant. Yeah. So if you're going to mail in your ballot, you should really think about doing that today if you want to absolutely ensure that it's going to count.
Yeah, that is worrisome. So once again, to echo what Andrew just said, if you are planning to mail in your ballot, mail it in today. Is that good advice?
Yes.
That's good advice. One other thing, a lot of people are concerned. We've only got about a minute left, but talk about the propositions. People are confused about those. We did a segment earlier this week on it, too.
Okay. Ballot propositions on the primary elections are different from those in the general elections. In the general elections, they're basically you're voting on a potential amendment to the state constitution. It will have the force of law if it passes. On the primary ballot, effectively, you're participating in a survey by one of the two parties as to the importance of various different party planks for their party platforms that they're going to be adopting later in the year. That's particularly important on the Republican side because, barring a political earthquake, they will control the state legislature again next year. So something that's on the Republican Party platform could wind up having the force of law down the road.
Okay, and there we've got to leave it, but that's not the end of HPM Politics and Government reporter Andrew Schneider. He will be live with me online, on air, on YouTube, on election night, starting at 8 o'clock right here on News 88.7. Andrew, get back to that fine reporting. You can read his reports and everything he does over at HoustonPublicMedia.org. We're going to take a break. When we come back, more politics with Brandon Rottinghaus.
We know you value.
Meet Tio Choco. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. This is his story. Visit ridemetro.org/Choco to find out where is Choco.
It only takes a few minutes to make a big difference. Join as a new member today at HoustonPublicMedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
I'm Christopher Kimball from Milk Street Radio. Adam Savage is a mythbuster, which means he once shot shrimp out of a cannon through several rings of fire to see if it would come out cooked.
The absurdity of that setup makes me so happy.
Busting Kitchen Myths with Adam Savage. That's coming up this week on Milk Street Radio from PRX.
Milk Street Radio can be heard Sunday afternoon at 1 here on News 88.7.
On the next Science Friday, we talk with a playwright who put cognitive decline at the heart of his new play, and with a neurologist on the latest findings and how best to lower your risk for dementia.
The good part and the bad part of aging is that the only thing one can do is lead a curious, open, full life.
That's on Science Friday from WNYC Studios.
Coming your way tomorrow at 1 on News 88.7. Support for Houston Public Media comes from Metro, introducing the Ride Metro Fare Card. The Ride Metro Fare system replaces the Metro Q Fare Card for bus and rail fares. Details at ridemetro.org/fare system.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from the Shepherd School of Music Orchestras, with works by Sibelius, Britten, Schumann, Piazzolla, Gottschalk, and more. March 7th and 8th in Studi Concert Hall. Tickets at music.rice.edu.
It's time again for University of Houston political science professor and party politics co-host Brandon Rottinghaus' Texperts series. In this newest episode, he explores the role of the county attorney and the role that he plays when he is looking at local elections. We're going to explore this with none other than Harris County Attorney Jonathan Fombonne. And without further ado, here's Texperts. We're going to get you Texperts in just a moment there. I want to give you a couple other bits of comments that have been coming in. Folks are talking over in the chat on YouTube as far as our conversation we just had with Andrew. One folks come in with Talarico comes off too polished and corporate. Reminds me of the little guy that comes with the Lego set. Jasmine will win. Brandon says that corporate is an interesting choice of words to describe the candidate that has accepted zero in corporate PAC money for his campaign. Keep those comments coming. We'll continue to monitor them. Now, let's go hear from Brandon Rottinghaus and Texperts.
Welcome to Texperts, Houston Public Media's short primers on Texas government. I'm Brandon Rottinghaus, a political science professor at the University of Houston. In January 2026, Texas Governor Greg Abbott went public with a pretty explosive accusation. He claimed Harris County elections were fraudulent and said the state might need to step in and take over how elections are run there.
And so time and time again, we're seeing Harris County engage in practices that compromise election integrity. The only thing I'm seeking to achieve is to ensure the integrity of elections in Harris County and across the state of Texas.
That's a huge claim, and it didn't sit unanswered for long. Within hours, Harris County Attorney Jonathan Fombonne struck back, basically saying, hold on, the governor doesn't have authority to do that. That back and forth gives us a perfect window into the role most people don't think about much, but matters a lot when it comes to voting rights: the county attorney. So what does a county attorney actually do in Texas? At its core, the county attorney is the county's chief civil lawyer. This isn't the person prosecuting crimes. That's the district attorney. Instead, the county attorney handles civil issues, advising county officials, representing the county in lawsuits, and making sure local government's following the law. But when it comes to elections, that job can get very political very fast. Another major part of the job is less flashy, but incredibly important, and that's day-to-day legal advice. County attorneys work closely with election officials, the county clerk, the voter registrar, and the tax offices. When election officials do get challenged in court over voter registration rules, polling locations, or election procedures, the county attorney is the one defending them or guiding the county's legal response. Sometimes county attorneys can go on offense. They don't just defend against lawsuits, they file them. In Harris County, the county attorney's office has filed or joined lawsuits arguing that certain state actions would suppress turnout or interfere with voters' rights. In one filing, the office warned that without legal intervention, the public's ability to choose its elected representatives, basically the core of democracy, was at risk. That tells you something important. This office isn't just reacting, it's actively trying to protect access to the ballot. The state has a long history of election fights, and its constitution expressly limits special laws targeting specific counties. That means that when state lawmakers try to impose unique voting rules on a single county, especially large, diverse counties like Harris, the county attorney often becomes the first line of defense in court. County attorneys don't get the attention that governors, legislators, or judges do. But when voting rights are challenged at the local level, they're often the ones who do the heavy lifting. filing lawsuits, advising officials, and standing up publicly for the integrity of elections. We talk with someone who knows a lot about this role, Interim County Attorney Jonathan Fombonne. Jonathan Fombonne, welcome to Texperts.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So the first question is, for listeners who may not know, what is the county attorney's role in elections, and how is it different from what a district attorney or a state attorney general does?
So the county attorney, generally speaking, and at least in Harris County, is the chief civil lawyer for the county. So that means that anything civil comes through our office, and that's anything related to commissioner's court, but also any other county independently elected official. And so that includes the county clerk and the county tax assessor collector. And that's important because in Texas, the county clerk normally runs elections and the county tax assessor runs voter registration. So we are their lawyers. And so anything that involves, an interpretation of the Texas election code and how that relates to the conduct of elections or voter registration, that's going to come through our office. Now, compared to a DA that's just enforcing criminal laws, there are some criminal provisions of the election code, but they're pretty limited. They really act in an enforcement capacity. The AG's office, and that's actually changed over the years, used to have some criminal enforcement powers. The Court of Criminal Appeals has said, actually, no, you don't anymore. But they have a role to play. They advise the Secretary of State's office. The Secretary of State doesn't really oversee elections per se, but they're sort of the state agency that promulgates rules surrounding elections, and really they act as an advisor to local election officials. So the AG also has a role to play in that sense. Now, we've also seen the AG engage in litigation around civil litigation around election law the last few years. So they have that general role that operates kind of in the background, but it's not really an official role.
Yeah. Obviously, elections are a big part of this. And so what kind of legal guidance does your office give to election officials like the tax assessor collector or voter registrar, like on a daily basis?
So a lot of it is minutia that are probably not all that interesting, right? It's,
That's all we do here.
You're developing a new form, right? What does it have to look like? How many languages does it have to be translated in, right? Different things like that. Things that are probably not that controversial. But then there are things that end up being on the news. So a prominent example is recently the tax assessor collector received a letter from Senator Betancourt basically saying that he had found a bunch of voters that appeared to be registered at P.O. boxes. And in 2021, the Senate had passed a law saying that you couldn't really maintain a residence at a commercial P.O. box. And so he was basically asking the tax assessor collector to look into that. And so we help them look at what the law requires, what it doesn't require. And that means, first of all, what does it mean to be a commercial P.O. box, right? Because there are people who are allowed to be registered at P.O. boxes. For example, people who are in the military or in other places like that, right? And then secondly, what is their responsibility when someone provides them with notice that there may be people registered at a P.O. box? So that's a very clear example of, when we come in on something that ends up being a hot button issue. So, but really, anything involving the conduct of elections. Then there are sort of initiatives that we're a part of at the county that usually, pop up. It's not a day-to-day thing, but pop up around the time of elections. So we operate an election hotline in the office so that people can call if they have legal questions. It's not really for voters, it's for people who are running elections. So in a place like Harris County, where we sometimes have hundreds of polling sites, the polling sites are being operated by really part-time workers, and some of them are experienced and some of them aren't at all. And so they're able to call our office and say, hey, this thing happened at the polls. Maybe there's some voter intimidation or somebody removed the candidate signs. What's the law around this? What am I allowed to do? So we do things like that too.
That's a great point. And obviously, sometimes these things end up in court because of the combativeness of it and because of the importance of voting rights. So when the state passes a law or proposes an initiative that affects local election administration, how does your office decide whether or not to challenge them in court?
Yeah, so I'm now the county attorney. Before that, I was Christian Menefee's number 2 for 5 years, and we've had a lot of election laws passed in that time. In 2021, the legislature passed this big omnibus bill that much of which actually was targeted at Harris County because of reforms Harris County had tried to make during the 2020 election. And so whenever a law like that gets passed, we look at it and we say, okay, what's the impact of this on the county, on the county's operations, and on voters, and what can we do to challenge it? Now, we're not, both Christian and I are civil litigators, and we like to litigate, but we don't just bring cases to make headlines. We want to make sure there's some merit to them. And the other thing to remember, and I think it's a challenge sometimes, but we're not voters, right? We, the county, are not voters. We don't have the same voting rights as voters. So we can't come in and say, hey, you're violating my voting rights. We have to come in as a government entity and saying you're doing harm to the entity itself. So in 2021, when SB1, which was this big omnibus bill, was passed, a lot of what I think were problematic provisions were targeted at voters themselves, but the county didn't really have standing to sue over them. And in fact, the county was a defendant in a lot of the cases that were brought because the county actually implements many of those laws. That said, we looked at some of those provisions, and there was one in particular that really troubled us. And it said that county election officials could not, quote, solicit mail-in ballot applications. And that was a law that was passed directly in response to something County Clerk Chris Hollins had done in 2020, where he had encouraged folks to seek mail-in ballot applications. And remember, this was COVID, and he was trying to remind people that, if you think that you can't vote because, for example, you have a disability or you're just over 65 and it's going to be dangerous for you to come vote, remember that you can get a mail-in ballot application and eventually cast a mail-in ballot. So anyway, we thought that word solicit was pretty vague and came with criminal penalties. And so we partnered with the elections administrator at the time, Isabel Longoria, and made her a plaintiff and challenged that law on First Amendment grounds. And that's because, again, we felt like, this is bad for voters in the end, right? This is something that is going to prevent voter education, and county election officials should be in the business of educating voters about, how they can vote and what their voting rights are. And so we brought that case. I could talk more if you want. We have another example. In 2023, the legislature passed a law that basically took away Harris County's ability to have an elections administrator. And just side explanation, most large counties in Texas actually don't run elections through the county clerk and tax assessor. There's a statute that allows them to combine the election and voter registration functions into a separate unelected office called an elections administrator. And that's what Harris County had done in 2020. And after the 2022 election, where some folks thought that the elections administrator hadn't done a great job in Harris County, the state passed a law that applies only to the county that basically prohibits us from having an elections administrator. And so that was because that was so targeted at the county. We thought we should do something about it. But again, we didn't just bring a case. We looked at what kind of interesting angles we could use and came up with this theory that I think is still correct, even though we ended up having to drop the case, which is that in Texas, you can't pass what are called bracket bills that aren't general. So a bracket bill is usually a population-based bill where you say, any county over X population, this law applies to you. And there's lots of those bills, and the legislature has done them forever, but there's some specific parameters there, which is you can't pass a bill that is obviously targeting a specific county. If you say 3.3 million people, then that probably only applies to Harris County, but you're not calling them out. The way they'd written this law, Brandon, though, is it said, if you're 3.3 million people on this date, and that was very clearly targeting the county. And so anyway, we brought a case, we got an injunction in the trial court, Texas Supreme Court eventually ruled against us. And so we unfortunately had to drop the case, but we thought that case had a lot of merit. And so again, the guiding principle is, do we have a chance? Is there like real merit behind it, right? We don't just file lawsuits to make headlines. And what serves the public interest?
Yeah, that's the hardest question, is how do you balance the kind of obviously political ramifications to how voting is handled in Texas and in Harris County, and the need to be able to represent the entire county, because obviously it's an elected official in position here, and it definitely can lead into these political questions. So how does the office balance these kinds of obligations?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not elected. I was appointed, but my prior boss was, and he has a certain point of view. So I don't think we hide from that, right? I think his perspective, and I wouldn't say it's a Democrat versus Republican thing, but his perspective is you should make it easy to vote. and we should have policies that make it easy for people to vote. And voting shouldn't be something that becomes more and more restrictive every year. In fact, it's the opposite, right? As technology gets better and as information gets better, people should find it easier to go vote. And so that's his philosophy. I think that's the philosophy of a lot of people in the county. And so I wouldn't say it's political in the sort of Democrat versus Republican sense, but as we know, there are folks in this country and here in Harris County who feel the opposite. And so there is certainly a political element to it. Again, like statutorily, our role is to represent the clients we're given, right? And they're given to us through elections. And so I think something that I've always been very proud of is that, we have Republican clients, and if they come to us, we give them the same legal advice as the legal advice we give to our Democratic clients. Like it's not, it's no different. But of course, if it's a decision that has to be made by Commissioner's Court, that's a majority Democratic body. At least it has been since I've been here. And so, when we're thinking about taking on litigation, we know we're going to get some questions from the Republican members of Commissioner's Court, and they'll probably vote against approving that kind of litigation. And we talk to them and we educate them as to why we think it's good. And in the end, that's a democratic process, working. And the people who are approving our lawsuits are the people who happen to have been elected at the time.
Let me make you an autocrat for our last question. That is, if you had a magic wand and could fix one thing about voting or make one change to voting in Harris County or Texas, what would it be?
I want to answer with the obvious answer, which is what every voting rights person will tell you, which is automatic voter registration. We spend so much time in the state, at the county, talking about, voter rolls and who should and shouldn't be on them, and making it difficult for people to register to vote. I think, you look at other jurisdictions, at least you can register to vote online in some places. Some of them just do it automatically, right? When you turn a certain age, there's different ways to do it, but I think automatic voter registration is the easiest. The other thing, and this is more about the conduct of elections itself, is we need to have mail ballot access for everybody. In Texas right now, it's typically reserved for people who are 65 and over or who have certain types of disabilities. If you believe that you're more likely to see fraud in mail ballot voting, that would apply to folks 65 and over just as much as it would to people who are 18 to 65. I don't see a principle for not having that, but it makes voting so much easier. And it's done in a lot of other places. I think Utah has universal mail ballot access. That is definitely not a Democratic state, right? California has it too. So there's no reason it can't be done. I think it would relieve the pressure on election officials, right? Because I think you would see most people voting by mail. You wouldn't necessarily have as many polling places. There are other reasons why we have too many polling places, in my view. But I think one of the reasons is just we have a lot of voters, right? And so that is one of the biggest pressure points on the county, and what in a county this size leads to mistakes sometimes is just the sheer number of polling locations. Because as I said earlier, they're manned by, essentially, they're not volunteers, but they're part-time workers, right? And even the ones who do it all the time, they're not doing it every day. And so you reduce the potential for error by taking humans out of that process and by taking polling locations out of that process. And also you just drastically reduce the cost of elections. It's so expensive to run an election in Harris County, right? Even a small one, you still are talking about, think about the CD18 election that just happened, the special election, that I think we had 80 plus polling locations on election day, just for a special election that had 26,000 voters turn out between early voting and election day. That's not a good use of resources. So those, I think, are the two things I would focus on the most.
Fantastic. Jonathan Fombonne, thank you so much.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks for listening to Texperts, and thanks to everybody, cast and crew here at Houston Public Media, for making it happen.
All episodes of Texperts are available on our website, houstonpublicmedia.org. Coming up, our conversation with comedian and actor Mae Martin. Stay with us.
Support for Houston Public.
Meet Gamola, songwriter, world-class violinist, and award-winning multi-genre artist. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. Visit ridemetro.org/Gamola to learn more about his ride.
Brazosport College, featuring the vocal ensemble Kitka on February 27th at 7:30 p.m. Tickets and more information at brazosport.edu/Clarion.
Support comes from Visit Galveston, presenting the Zopé Italian Family Circus, a one-ring show that includes acrobatics, equestrian stunts, clowns, and storytelling. March 6th through 30th. Tickets at visitgalveston.com.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from the Holdsworth Center, taking nominations to honor teachers in the Houston area to re-energize at a wellness retreat in the Texas Hill Country. Nomination information at teacherretreat.org.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous.
Mae Martin often draws from experiences in their work as a stand-up comic, television writer, and actor. Celeste and Frank had a chance to speak with Mae about their upcoming tour, which is headed to Houston this Friday at the Cullen Performing Arts Center.
Mae, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Hi. So what can audiences expect from you on this tour? And I find the title very interesting, The Possum.
Yeah, the title is a little bit mysterious. You have to choose titles before you even write the show because you've got to announce the tour. And so I really ambitiously named it The Possum, hoping I'd come up with some material about possums. And there is a little bit in there, but really the show is just about trying to make sense of the world that we live in and a lot of embarrassing stories. And it's just going to be a nice chance to meet people and answer. I'm going to do like a question bucket and answer questions from the audience, which I love doing. And it'll be great.
That's fun.
So you are in L.A. as we speak. Tell us about the tour. Where does it start? When do you get to Houston? How long are you going to be on the road?
Oh my God, it starts. I'm so nervous. It starts on Wednesday and in Oklahoma. And I'm just double checking that I'm in Houston.
On Friday, right?
Yes. Yeah. And then I'm in Houston. I mean, I'm already so disorganized, but yeah, Houston's my second stop and I've never been to Houston, so I'm excited. And yeah, I'm mostly nervous about whether I'm going to be able to sleep on the bus. I don't know if you've ever slept on a bus or have any tips.
Well, I'll have you know that Harris County, where Houston is, we have more people just in Harris County than the whole state of Oklahoma. So
right? Oh my God.
Yes. If Harris County was a state, we'd be 25th state in the union. So we're a big place, but we have some great restaurants. If you get a chance to maybe have at least a little steak while you're here or a little barbecue.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my God. That's what yes. Someone already told me that Houston is the place to go for steak.
And barbecue. So have barbecue for lunch and have a steak that night.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to arrive at my venue just full and bloated full of barbecue.
That's
will empower me to go.
Speaking of which, where is your venue in Houston? Do you know the name of it?
I'm so sorry. I'm at the Cullen Performance Hall.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, she's going to be at the Cullen Performance Hall.
Beautiful.
So I know that's downtown. Beautiful. You'll love it. You will absolutely love it.
So, Mae, when you're creating new stand-up like this, where do you usually start? From your personal experiences, from current events, something else? Talk to us about that.
When I go to see comedy, I generally just want to laugh. So I usually start with personal stories, and then that's the way that I approach any current event. It's through the lens of just personal, relatable stories. So yeah, usually pretty introspective, pretty self-deprecating, and no kind of diatribes,
Yeah.
Well, I read in your bio, you've been doing comedy since you were 13.
Yeah, isn't that insane? I don't know why I was allowed to do that, but I started so young. I had braces and acne when I started, and now. And
your teeth look great, so the braces worked.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I have no other skill set, so I'm glad comedy worked out.
But it's interesting because as you talk about building from your personal experiences, I'm curious how your work often blends humor with vulnerability. And essentially, how do you make that funny if there are some more kind of serious themes in there and feeling kind of vulnerable and putting yourself out there?
Well, I mean, I think I've always been an oversharer, so it doesn't, it's weird. Like the feedback I get is that I really radiate this vulnerability. I don't necessarily feel that way. I'm like, aren't we all kind of completely overwhelmed and at a loss with the state of the world and our own sort of insecurities and things? So I'm just kind of voicing what I assume everyone's going through. But yeah, then after shows, sometimes people are like, hey, keep doing it because we can tell you're really super vulnerable. And I'm like, I think I'm doing okay. I don't know. But yeah, I think when you share things that are super personal that you think might be just specific to you, those are the things that really get the best reactions and people can relate to. So that's how I approach it anyway.
And you've worked across stand-up and television. You've had Netflix, extremely successful Netflix special. How is writing and performing essentially with in front of a live audience versus working on a kind of more of a scripted type project?
I don't think I'll ever stop doing stand-up. Yeah, I just made a show called Wayward that was a thriller, and I did a show called Feel Good for Netflix. But even throughout filming those, I was going out to clubs at night and doing sets. It's what I fell in love with when I was a teenager, and it's so immediate, and the relationship between the audience and the performer is so yeah, it's really special. Yeah, and
so intimate, I would imagine.
So intimate, and especially when the news feels so bleak. There's something about getting in a room full of people that is so affirming and reassuring that like people are essentially good and they just want to have a good time, and we're all kind of the same. And it's just really nice to go across America and have that experience. I feel really lucky.
Yeah, and it's so easy to draw off the energy of a big room like that. That you can almost feel it. And they come wanting you to be successful, like you say. It's the nice thing about live audiences. They came to have fun and to make sure that you are a success that night. And it's always good to have the audience on your side.
Exactly. Yeah, they got babysitters, or it's up to you to make sure they have a good time.
But you mentioned how you started, and you and Frank were talking about you started when you were 13. Over the course of your career, how have you seen your voice kind of evolve and change and almost mature into what we know as Mae today?
That's a good question. I think in my teens, like all teenagers, you're kind of trying on different personalities and seeing what fits and imitating your heroes and kind of trying to be cool. And so there was definitely a turning point around my mid-20s, I think, where I started being more honest about myself and what was going on with me. And then the reaction to that was just infinitely more connected. And so that marked a big shift. But really the comedy scene has changed a lot too. I mean, it was 2001 I started doing comedy, and it was the Wild West back then. It's come together a lot more now. There are lots of different pockets now that you can fit into, and you don't necessarily have to be out doing the clubs every night and with the same four guys.
Yeah.
So it's
I'm curious if there are any themes that really feel important to you right now, or that you really kind of touch on during this tour of the Possum.
Yeah, I think, well, I'm talking a lot about in the tour about the nature of reality and what what's real and what's not. I think I live in LA, which is all full of people who are into esoteric mysticism and tarot cards and crystals and things, and I've become really interested in that. So I'm kind of making fun of that, but also looking into scientifically, is any of that valid, and things like manifestation and that kind of thing really interests me. And also just connection and how important it is that we all stay connected to each other, and that our window of tolerance is wide, because we need to be connected right now. We need to find each other and get out of our houses and off our phones.
Do you find yourself drawing on current events, or do you stay away from current events?
Well, like I said, current events are kind of tangentially connected to my own personal anxiety. So it's I don't really know. It's not. I wouldn't say it's a political show or talks directly about current events, but it's more about the overall sense of overwhelm that I think a lot of people are feeling as they kind of wade through the swamp of information that's coming at us. So it's it's sort of more indirectly.
Do you feel like that's something that a lot of comedians are kind of working through right now? And what is the comedy circuit feeling right now with essentially kind of what's happening in current events and the way life is right now?
Yeah, it's such an interesting one because, growing up, I mean, I loved George Carlin and Richard Pryor, and these people would really speak truth to power and speak really directly about what was going on. And I do feel like now, maybe, I don't know, like I've been in clubs and people are trying to speak directly about things like the Epstein files, and it kills the energy in the room.
Right.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Because it's also like, what do you say? It's all, maybe it's just too soon, too fresh. So I think I find a roundabout way in there is just talking about, how we're all feeling and, without killing the vibe too much.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's probably, I would imagine, hard because in some ways comedy is kind of making fun of or exasperating, magnifying some of the realities. And there are some things that feel kind of maybe not like you said, that just kind of kill the energy. So it's finding that balance, right?
Yeah, it was a lot easier, we're making fun of, George W. Bush. You could make, he said a word wrong. You could make fun of that he mispronounced a word. And now it's like, God, give me George W. Bush back.
Where is Sarah Palin when you need her?
Yeah, like it's almost too surreal to add a layer of absurdity to. So I'm like I've always been a more personal comic anyway, and talking about my childhood and things like that. So I'm sticking to what I'm good at while also trying not to bury my head in the sand and trying to talk about things as well so people don't feel disappointed.
Totally. So you're about to, head out of LA. You're about to start this tour. What's next for you? I know you haven't started the tour just quite yet, but you're going to be landing here and it's going to get going. Any new projects in the works?
Always 500. I am just so, that's sort of how I work. I have like 5 things going on at once. So I'm working on new music and a new scripted series for Netflix and lots of things. But mainly I'm excited to have this crazy adventure across America. I have no idea what it's going to be like. I want to go to all the historical sites and the museums and the art galleries and just try to soak it all up and be present. So it's going to be really fun. I feel like it's kind of a rock star fantasy experience to be on a tour bus.
For sure.
Going to 37. Yeah.
Is this your first big tour like this?
Yeah, it is. I used to live in England in the UK, and so I did a big tour there, but everything's so close together. You can do it all, in a week, basically. It's so close. So this is definitely the biggest tour I've done. Yeah.
Wow. Well, good luck. I hope you have a good time. And I hope you find that steak when you're here in Houston.
I'm going to hunt down that steak. I can't wait.
Mae Martin, thank you so much for joining us. And we hope that you enjoy your time while in Houston.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
That was comedian Mae Martin, who will be at the Cullen Performing Arts Center this Friday. Coming up in the second hour of Hello Houston, more of today's top headlines, a visit with the Bryan Museum, and your current obsessions, so keep sharing them with us. Talk at hellohouston.org, or you can text them to us, 713-440-8870. Stay with us.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Learn something new.
I want to start with how crowds of people can act like fluids.
Yes.
What?
I mean, this is physics, so I love it.
Make a connection.
I have no idea who they voted for. I don't care. This tailgate in particular, everybody's welcome.
Dig a bit deeper.
We're often looking for a small secular liturgy for our lives, and poetry can provide that sometimes.
Stay curious with All Things Considered from NPR News.
And that'll begin at 3 o'clock this afternoon.
Beginning at 3 p.m. on News 88.7.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Hildebrand, MBA at UT Austin's Macomb School of Business, offering the weekend MBA at Houston. Campus visit February 28th. Details at texasmbaevents.com. Make it here. Overcast skies at the University of Houston with 75 degrees. This is your NPR station, KUHF Houston News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. More of Hello Houston, and it is noon.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, Representative Tony Gonzales of Texas is saying he will not resign following the release of explicit text messages between him and a former aide who died by suicide last year. We'll discuss the latest on this story with Texas Tribune reporter Eleanor Klibanoff. I'm Ernie Manous. We'll also talk with Bryan Museum curator Eric Broussard about their collection of historical artifacts, documents, and artwork relating to Texas history and the American West. Plus, it's Thursday, which means it's time for us to share the things we're obsessed with this week for our regular Thursday feature, Current Obsessions. And we want to hear from you. Give us a call or text us at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Members of Congress are reacting to an NPR investigation that found the Justice Department withheld some Epstein files related to allegations President Trump sexually abused a minor in the 1980s. A law passed last year mandates the release of all files, but those withheld include what appear to be more than 50 pages of FBI interviews and notes from conversations with Trump's accuser. The ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, Robert Garcia, pressed the DOJ for answers.
What we have is a survivor that we have verified, that others have verified, and those files are missing. And it's not just those. It's an additional 50% of files that are missing. It is unconscionable, it is illegal, and Pam Bondi and the president need to answer to where those files are.
The committee's Republican chair, James Comer, said the panel's looking into the allegations outlined in the NPR report. Today, members of the panel are questioning former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in a closed-door deposition in New York. She has said she never had any personal connections with Jeffrey Epstein or personal knowledge of his sex crimes. The average rate for a 30-year fixed mortgage fell just below 6% this week, according to Freddie Mac. That is the lowest rate in about 3.5 years. NPR's Stephen Basaha says cheaper home interest rates could lead to more Americans getting into the housing market.
Mortgage rates have been steadily declining since last May, so it's not like housing got drastically more affordable this week. But Kate Wood with NerdWallet said the psychological effect of a mortgage below 6% and just how long people have been waiting to move could get more Americans house shopping.
There are people who are certainly going to reach that breaking point of, I love my mortgage rate, but my goodness, I cannot stand this house anymore.
The U.S. is in a housing affordability crisis, and cheaper mortgages can help. But the U.S. also has a housing shortage, so a flood of new buyers without more supply could drive prices up, cutting into any affordability gains. Stephen Basaha, NPR News.
Cuba says a boat registered in Florida was carrying 10 people with, quote, terrorist intent. NPR's Ada Peralta reports a gunfight ended with 4 people dead.
Cuba's Interior Ministry says the boat entered into Cuban waters, and when border troops approached, the occupants opened fire. Cuban troops returned fire, killing 4 people and injuring 6. The Cuban government says the men on board were Cubans living in Florida planning terrorist attacks on the island. Kiki Naranjo is a friend of one of the survivors and says none of the men were terrorists. They are all men who want Cuba to be free, he says, but they grew tired of promises by politicians. Naranjo and his friend run a group that he says wanted to sabotage the government from the inside. The U.S. says it will investigate and react appropriately. Ada Peralta, NPR News, Mexico City.
It's NPR.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. The Houston ISD Board of Managers is scheduled to vote tonight on Superintendent Mike Miles' recommendation to close 12 schools in the district. Miles says aging infrastructure and years of enrollment declines make the closures a necessity.
Most of all, it's about keeping our kids safe and in schools that operate well. I mean, functionally. That's the deal.
HISD began surveying affected teachers last week to see where they may want to be relocated. If the board approves the closures, the campuses will be shut down by June 4th. This Monday will mark 190 years since Texas declared independence from Mexico. News 88.7's Michael Atkinson reports on the town where Texas became Texas.
On March 2nd, 1863, 5 dozen men unanimously signed on to Texas's Declaration of Independence. It was a major turning point in the Texas Revolution, which had been going on for months, and it happened in a town called Washington on the Brazos, about an 80-mile drive northwest of Houston. Tynan Shadle is a site manager there.
Most of these men are Americans. They're expressing their American ideals at a town called Washington, right? Most of the other towns in Texas, San Felipe de Austin, Gonzales, Goliad, these are Spanish names.
Historians say the Texas Declaration of Independence was undeniably influenced by the signing of the United States' Declaration of Independence in 1776, which also happened 250 years ago this year. I'm Michael Atkinson, News 88.7.
Hear more about Washington on the Brazos and the 1836 convention that took place there. That's coming up this afternoon on News 88.7 In Depth during All Things Considered. A former NASA engineer who was fired after being accused of sexually assaulting multiple women is now suing the women who sued him and the Houston Police Department. Those assault charges were dropped after investigators found they could not prove the claims were true. Initially, Eric Sim was charged with 7 counts of sexual assault. He maintained the whole time that the encounters were consensual. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive. Progressive Commercial Auto Insurance protects the vehicles that work to keep small businesses moving forward, including protection while running errands and other tasks. At progressivecommercial.com.
From Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Hello Houston with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Welcome. Okay, you got one. You didn't get 3 today, but you did get one, and it's me, and I'm here with you. Celeste and Frank have the day off. They'll be back tomorrow, but we've still got so much to talk about and to look at. If you're joining us on YouTube, you can join the chat over there with our YouTubers. They keep a very active group going, and we enjoy reading their comments. You can also, as you just heard Jim say, give us a call, 713-440-8870. Join into any of the topics we're doing today. Keep in mind, it's Thursday. You know what that means. It is Current Obsessions Day. We want to know, what are yours? Share them with me. We'll be going through them later in the show. So why don't you let us know? You know, is it a book? Is it a film? Is it some game or some piece of clothing or a knickknack? What has obsessed you? Let us know. 713-440-8870 or email talk@hellohouston.org. In the first hour of the show, we were talking about polling with Andrew Schneider, and I went back and looked. Since October, Talarico, in the very first poll I'm looking at, Talarico was in the lead by 6 points, but since then they've traded the lead back and forth. Crockett has been as high as 13%, with the most recent polls showing Talarico in the lead by 6%. Over on the Republican side, Paxton and Hunt have traded off the lead back and forth, but with the most recent poll having Paxton and Cornyn in an even tie. So what does that all say? Your vote matters. Get out there and vote. Pay no attention to these polls. They're all over the place. What's important is that you vote. If you're mailing in your ballot, please try and get it done by today to guarantee you get it postmarked and counted. If you're going to early vote, do it tomorrow. That's your last day, I do believe, to early vote. And if you're going to vote in the general, that is on Tuesday. Make sure your vote counts. Okay, All of that said, I'm not even going to try and give the weather this time. It's nice out there. It's going to be nice out there. There's my weather report. Let's go into the headlines. Texas Republican Representative Tony Gonzales says he will not resign despite the release of explicit text messages between him and a former staffer who later died by suicide. The messages published in recent days have appeared to show Gonzales asking the aide for intimate photos even after she told him that the conversation had, quote, gone too far. The aide, Regina Santos Avilas, killed herself in September 2025. Gonzales told CNN he's staying in office and serving his constituents, saying, "I work every day for the people of Texas," saying additionally, "What you've seen is not all the facts." Some Republican lawmakers have called for him to resign or step back from his re-election campaign, but others, including House leadership, say that they are waiting on an ethics investigation before taking further action. The controversy unfolds just days before what we mentioned, the March 3rd primary in the South Texas district. Joining me now to talk about this, someone who knows a whole lot more about this than I do. It's Texas Tribune's Eleanor Klibanoff, who has been following this story. Eleanor, welcome back to the program. Good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
If folks want to join into the conversation, you can call right now. It's 713-440-8870. I gave kind of a primer of what's going on here, but this is really on so many levels just a sad story across the board. But if you can fill in the pieces that I may have missed to help get everyone up to speed on what we're talking about.
I mean, as you said, just absolutely a tragedy. This sort of first came to light after Ms. Santos Aviles died by suicide in September. And, it was, just a horrifically tragic story. She was a mother, by all accounts, like a very dedicated public servant to her community in Uvalde, where she worked as the district director for Tony Gonzales. She died by self-immolation, just really, really tragic. Pretty quickly after her death, rumors started to swirl that maybe there had been an affair between her and Tony Gonzales, who is a married father of 6. There was some sort of there was some reporting that didn't necessarily have documentary proof attached, some allegations floating around. And then really just in the last 10 days, the San Antonio Express News managed to confirm that a former staffer sort of confirmed that there had been an affair. And then, as you mentioned, her husband released some of these text messages, seeming to provide pretty clear proof that at least an affair occurred.
Do the text messages, and I have not gone into all of it, but do the text messages confirm an affair or confirm a conversation which could lead to harassment between the two of them? Do they go so far as to establish that they were intimate?
I think the text messages which were provided by her husband to media outlets, including the Texas Tribune, indicate that they were sending texts of an explicit nature. He was the small segment of texts that were released show Congressman Gonzales pushing for her to send, as you said, explicit photos, asking her, questions of a sexual nature, even after she was saying, this is going too far. We have to pause this. Like, let's not continue this conversation. What the San Antonio Express News has reported is that there was additionally, they were coordinating meetups, that they were sort of carrying on a relationship of some kind, which the Texas Tribune has not independently verified, but that they were at a cabin together owned by another staffer, and that she had texted this staffer at a certain point confirming that they had an affair. So that's sort of what we know.
And I guess on some level, it doesn't really matter actually if they had an affair or not. Simply the messages that we've seen already have crossed a line of what is appropriate in the workplace by far.
Certainly. I think that there's a lot of discussion right now about, what led to her dying by suicide, what led to all of this, who, was he sort of the aggressor? And frankly, assuming that it turns out to be true, that they were having a sexual relationship or that he was even pursuing a sexual relationship at all with an employee, that is prohibited by House ethics rules. That is prohibited by, there are some, House laws governing that came into play after the Me Too movement in 2018 that are pretty clear that, no matter whether it was consensual or not, a member of Congress cannot have a sexual relationship with a member of their staff.
The area that makes this even more cloudy, I would guess, is the suicide that follows and the implication that her husband actually was having an affair and led to the suicide. Do these two stories tie together, or can we look at them as separate incidences?
So the police report, which was released last week by the Uvalde Police Department, shows that when first responders were on the scene immediately after, she set herself on fire, that she told them initially that she did so because her husband was having an affair with her best friend. The detective's report that's in there definitely seems to indicate that this was a family in turmoil. They said that she had been very upset, struggling with alcohol and perhaps mixing that with antidepressants because she had had an affair. That sort of is indicated in the report, that she and her husband had become estranged, that he allegedly now was having an affair, and that this sort of pushed her to, on at least one other occasion, attempt self-harm before this. So I think it sounds like perhaps part and parcel of a larger situation that the family was dealing with, but just a really complicated, sad situation.
And in no way do I mean to sound cold when I ask this next question, and our hearts do go out to the family and to her, of course, hearts and prayers. Regardless of what happened to her after the fact, simply the behavior that we're seeing from the Representative Gonzales, already, I feel, is where the story can even end, in that is where the harm happened. That is where he broke trust with his constituents, with his behavior in office, in how he should conduct himself in that position with that title. How come the House isn't standing up to that and saying, there is a clear line crossed at this point? All the rest that happens definitely is heartbreaking and muddies the waters even more. But it seems like they have enough at the very first part of this story.
I think that's certainly what some members of the House are saying. We've heard specifically from a lot of Republican women saying, this essentially what you said, right? I've seen enough to know that this was inappropriate. I think, as you noted, Representative Gonzales has said, there's more to this story, more needs to come out. He is refusing to resign. All of this happening on the brink of essentially a job interview for him, right? Which is he is running for voters to decide whether or not he can, have another 2 years in that seat. And so the timing is, voters will have a chance to decide how much they care about this and whether or not they feel like that's in line. What they know so far is in line with what they want from a U.S. representative. But it's a huge district. And, I will be interesting to see how much this story penetrates into other parts of the district.
Here, we've been following very closely polling happening in our own city races and county races. I'm curious, what is the polling showing us of the voters' appetite there? How is Gonzales doing right now at this point? And has this story had traction early enough that it affected the polling, or don't we have a clear picture?
I don't think we yet have polling that was done post, after this information has come to light, but we should say he was already running in a very, very tight reelection. He's running in a primary against several candidates, or the leading candidate is Brandon Herrera, who's a gun rights activist, who ran against him last cycle and got within 400 votes of unseating Representative Gonzales. So I think even before any of this, without any of this, he was facing a very tough reelection. Some internal polling from the Herrera campaign seems to indicate that, he's up pretty significantly over Representative Gonzales even before this. So I think it is possible, that he will not resign, but voters will decide, to not give him another term in Congress.
Yeah, it's just such a disturbing story to talk about, too. I'm curious the position and the feeling you're getting from at the federal level in the House of Representatives, because of the razor-thin margin, it seems to be skewing how they look at things there when it comes to holding on to a seat at all costs, because if he resigns, they may not fill that seat again until the next election and all of that, as we saw happening here in Texas 18. So I'm just curious the feedback you get from the national level on this story.
Certainly, I think that tight margin and the fact that the election is so soon, I think probably is contributing, to some extent to certain members of leadership's unwillingness to sort of come out and say, like, yeah, he needs to resign today. I think that's sort of probably a strategic decision to a large degree. Certainly, President Trump, who has endorsed Congressman Gonzales, has not, commented on any of this, and so I think. There's no way that's not factoring into how they're thinking about all of this. But I also think just the fact that the election is so soon, gives a little bit of cover to say, we'll let the voters handle this.
Gonzales has said, you've not seen all the facts. From your reporting, from interviewing, from your understanding, do we have any idea what that could actually mean? What more? It seems, and of course, it's early in an investigation, but it seems pretty damning what we have. What could possibly alter that? Even if it was consensual, it seems as though there was a period where it was inappropriate.
I mean, I think we should just say, like, we are looking at a very narrow set of information that's been made publicly available by, her husband, who we know is, was trying to seek a settlement with Congressman Gonzales in exchange for a non-disclosure agreement, a detail that the congressman himself put publicly on social media when he said he was being blackmailed. The lawyer saying, we were trying to quietly negotiate a settlement to avoid as much of this sort of political circus that we now are in. And so I think there is almost guaranteed that there's more information out there, right? We have just a snippet of the text messages. We have just a snippet of, her husband's allegations, Congressman Gonzales sort of alluding to there being more information, but not necessarily sharing his version of events. So I think there is more information to come, that there's no doubt about that. Whether that is enough to exonerate him for, as you said, sort of the bare minimum of not having a sexual relationship with your staffer, as the House rules prohibit, I don't know. But I think it will be interesting to see. We know that the House Ethics Commission is investigating this. They sort of have rules against releasing those investigations just before an election. So we won't see all of that until after the election. But certainly he remains defiant and pretty confident that there's more information to come out.
And if I'm not mistaken, the husband does say that he has more texts, correct?
Yes, the husband's lawyer has said that the other texts are, he used the term sexually grotesque, certainly seem to be implying that they have shown a sort of modest version of what was being exchanged between the two of them. And, the husband sent a text message that, we have obtained from him, that to her colleague sort of outing this affair. Like, I think it was, a very messy time. And so, certainly I think if there was any clearly exonerating evidence, that probably this would be a good time for the congressman to show that. But we'll see what comes out.
Yeah. Eleanor, it's a tragic story on all directions. And really, I'm sorry that this is what you have to spend your days looking at. It's hard, and I know it can be painful to report on these kind of stories, but I appreciate your coming here and sharing what you have with us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Eleanor Klibanoff, who is with the Texas Tribune, has been looking at the story of Texas Republican Representative Tony Gonzales and the affair that led to suicide. Coming up on the show, we are going to take a look at some other stories. We're going to visit the Bryan Museum out in Galveston, and we are going to take a look at your current obsessions, the things that are keeping you going, that keep you driving a little longer in your car, listening longer on the radio, staying up a little late, streaming. All of that's coming up. Share your current obsessions with us right now, calling or texting 713-440-887 or emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. This is Hello Houston. I'm Ernie Manous. We'll be right back after this break.
We know you value Houston Public Media. That's why you're watching right now. So take the next step and become a new member of the station you rely on. Every gift makes a difference. And what matters most right now is supporting the station that brings you the news and information you rely on. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. So join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
Admired the United States.
We had a love affair with America. It was a big brother, it was the ally.
But that relationship is being challenged.
It's very, very confusing and very unsettling.
Get a European view on the state of the U.S., plus a Stonecutter's tour of Europe.
There's something about that space that just vibrates within you.
On the next Travel with Rick Steves.
Travel with Rick Steves, Saturday mornings at 6 on News 88.7.
Next time on Climate One, most Americans get their power from a utility that needs to turn a profit for its investors. And people are fed up with the status quo.
In Arizona and across the country, the utilities have just gotten greedy and are asking for more than they need.
Electric bills are bonkers. What can we do about it? On the next Climate One.
Sunday morning at 6 on News 88.7.
On the next Planet Money, we look back at the history and economics of oil in Venezuela, the world's first petrostate.
Oil funds are just pouring into the country. There's so much money around that you can't even believe it.
And on How I Built This, two early-stage founders get business advice from host Guy Raz and Julia Hartz, co-founder of Eventbrite. That's on the next Planet Money and How I Built This from NPR.
You can hear that Saturday morning at 9 on News 88.7.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous.
As we approach the 190th anniversary of the signing of the Texas Declaration of Independence on March 2nd, Texas history lovers may be excited to learn about a remarkable trove of artifacts right here in the Lone Star State. The Bryan Museum, located in Galveston and housed within the historic Galveston Orphans Home, is home to one of the world's largest collection of historical artifacts, documents, and artwork relating to Texas and the American West. To tell us more about the remarkable collection and the story behind them, we're joined by curator Eric Broussard. Eric, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. For folks out there who just happen to be huge history buffs or just museum curious and you want to join the conversation, give us a call. 713-440-8870. Eric, I had the joy of getting to MC the gala last year at the Bryan Museum, and while I was there, I got tours and I got to see it, and I was so impressed with the collection and kind of embarrassed that I didn't already know more about the Bryan Museum. So here you are. Here's your platform. Tell us all a little bit more about this amazing museum.
Well, we just celebrated our 10th year anniversary. We opened in June of 2015. So last June was our 10 year. As you said, the building that we're in is amazing. It was built in 1895 to actually serve as a permanent home for some of the orphans of Galveston. In 2013, Mr. Bryan purchased the building. It underwent a 2.5-year restoration. And almost everything you see in the museum was actually at one time part of his private collection.
Yeah.
So we are just honored to work with such an amazing collection of artifacts, documents, photographs, art, as you said. It's just, it's a great place to learn about Texas history and the history of the American West.
Is it hard to stay in your lane? And by that, I mean, when you're doing a history museum, you've got Texas, but you're also looking at the American West, and there's so much good stuff out there. But you got to know who you are and know your identity. And you seem to have amassed an amazing collection that really represents your identity.
Yeah, absolutely. So it stemming from a private collection, being J.P. Bryan's life passion to collect these artifacts and amazing documents, it definitely leaned more toward Texas. And, we are in Texas, so that is always our focus. It's just, he also liked to collect firearms, saddles, that didn't necessarily pertain to Texas and art as well. So that's why we can have that tagline on the end, Texas and the American West, but we're all Texas.
Yeah. Okay, so take us into the collection a little bit. You mentioned J.P. Bryan, so I'm curious, what did he bring to the museum to start, and what have you added in the years since?
His personal collection at the time the museum opened was approximately 70,000 artifacts.
Oh my Lord.
When you include all the photos, postcards,
Yeah.
documents, things like that. And we have added, I would say, several hundred more from donations from some of our wonderful patrons, artwork, documents, a lot of Galveston things.
Yeah.
We've got items that survived the 1900 storm. In fact, we have some of those on display right now in our special exhibit called From the Vault.
You're a curator. I'm curious, are you here at this museum because you're a curator looking for a place to curate, or are you here because you have a rich, deep love of Texas, or did coming here as a curator give you a rich, deep love of Texas?
Well, my education in grad school was a focus on 19th century American history with a focus on Western expansion. So I was already a big fan of the American West history, being a Cajun most of my life, growing up as a Cajun at least. I didn't really know that much about Texas history, but I have completely immersed myself in it. And one of my favorite things about my job is I get to learn something new every day.
Yeah.
And, if it's not 5 or 10 things I learn a day, it's been a slow day. But no, I definitely have a deeper appreciation now for Texas history because of the collection and the way that we're able to present these things.
I want to remind everyone we are talking with Eric Broussard, who is the curator for the Bryan Museum. If you'd like to join the conversation, give us a call, 713-440-8870. I'm assuming, having been there and seen the museum, even when it was mostly closed, you get that feeling night at the museum-y, you want to walk through, you want to see things. Tell me about moments of items that you've come across where you've taken an extra breath or been like, oh my God, I can't believe this is here in front of me. What's something that's really put you in a moment of awe?
Being a history nerd, the documents always astound me. When you're holding something in your hand that was written and signed by Stephen F. Austin or Sam Houston, it's just it's a very humbling experience.
Yeah.
To just hold that much history in your hands. Definitely my favorite. And we've got some personal items that belong to Stephen F. Austin, Santa Ana. And, it always makes you pause and really reflect on how much history you're holding right there.
Give me an idea, a suggestion of something you've come across you didn't know you had in the collection. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is that.
So this is a bit obscure, but when I first started here 5 years ago, I was going through and doing inventory in our vaults, and I found a Henry iron frame rifle, one of the first repeating rifles ever produced. And the iron frames are super rare. Most people see Henry rifles, they have the brass receivers. And I knew immediately that it's if not one of the most sought after American firearm by collectors. Yeah. And we had one sitting in the vault and it wasn't on display. And I was like, okay, we got to fix this. and it is now on display in our upstairs gun case.
Oh, that is wonderful. As you were mentioning the documents too. You have tens of thousands of rare books and documents in the collection. And I think people often think of a museum for these hard objects like a gun, a piece of pottery, whatever. But so much of this richness and the history that needs to be preserved are the things that are in the documents and the books.
Absolutely. And if you come by the museum and visit us, you'll notice that, yes, there are a lot of physical artifacts, but everywhere on the walls, if it's not art, it's a historical document. Anything that is on the wall in a frame is the original document. So you can actually come here and see on display things signed by the founders of Texas.
Yeah.
And even before.
We talk about this and we started this even by saying the 190th anniversary, and which I think would put people in the mindset that we're looking at items a couple hundred years old. You've got some items that go back much further.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The first thing that you'll encounter once you leave the orientation room is our first Texans case. And they're arrow points, spearheads. There's a mortar and pestle. Some of these things date back to 11,000 BCE.
That's crazy, you know? But I think what's so cool about that too is it gives you a sense of place in all of this craziness, that we have been here for so long as a people, and that we have signs and things to witness our existence on this planet in this location. And at moments that must be awe-inducing.
Right. And when people think about Texas history, like you said, they think, oh, a couple hundred years old at the most. But, you know, before it was Texas, people were still here. They were still living their lives and creating tools and weapons. And you have to look for it, but they left their mark for sure.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about what's currently on display. What can people see when they come to the museum?
Well, most of our collection is static. So it's the same for long periods of time. Our main floor is our Texas timeline. We start with, like I said, the first Texans, which go back, you know, several thousand years BCE.
I just have to tell you, I think it's funny that you're talking about something back, you know, 12,000 years ago, and you're calling them the first Texans. So I think that's important. Go on.
That's just the way we label it, and that's how we look at it.
Yeah.
The people that were here before us, they may not have lived in Texas, but it's still the same area. So after the first Texans case, we've got, you know, we take you through the Spanish rule of Mexico and Texas, and then the frontier room deals with you know, the first Anglo colonization efforts by Stephen F. Austin. And others to follow. Then that takes you up until statehood. And then our last gallery on the main floor is our Statehood and Beyond gallery, which takes you from basically the beginning rumblings of what would become the Civil War up through the end of the Mexican Revolution. So all in all, it takes you up to about 1921 and what was going on in Texas. And then on our ground floor, we've got our Galveston Orphans Home exhibit, which we originally did as a special exhibit and is now a permanent fixture on our ground floor. We also have a rotating art exhibit on the ground floor. And then upstairs, we have our Rest of the West gallery, which is a lot of guns, a lot of saddles, a lot of great art. We've got our Texas Masters Art Gallery upstairs, which is all about Texas art and Texas artists. And our library and our special exhibits gallery as well, which changes out about every 4 months.
And currently go through what's in the special gallery?
Sure. Right now, we've got our special exhibit is called From the Vaults. You know, most times we'll pick a topic and we'll use items from the collection that maybe haven't been on display or aren't on permanent display. And we'll supplement that with things from other museums and archives and create a special exhibit. Well, you know, we only display about 15% of our collection. And, you know, we've got 22,000 square feet and can still only display about 15% of what we have here on site. And so we actually decided, wouldn't it be neat if we go through the vaults and look at just all of the cool things that we don't ever get to show people and create a special exhibit out of it. And that's exactly what we did. So we've got a Texas history section that has some great documents on display. We've got Native American art and pottery. We've got a religious art section, which was something else that Mr. Bryan loves to collect. And also focusing in on donated items, also information and personal items that belong to E.E. Townsend, who was responsible for starting Big Bend National Park. And, you know, and all things cowboy as well. So all things Texas. And you know, it was a great opportunity because working with a private collection, or what was a private collection, to start with, there are things that Mr. Bryan collected that don't really fit our collection scope. So it isn't anything that we'd ever have occasion to display because it's not part of our mission statement. So like folk art and things like that, and the religious art that he loved to collect that is so beautiful. It's just a lot of fun getting to show the public that side of the collection as well.
We talked a little bit about the building that you're in, Galveston's Orphans Home, and we talked about how it was there, and then the storm came. What was the forward history of that building after the storm, and how did it come to be this museum today?
Great question. Well, so after the 1900 storm, the building was heavily damaged.
Right.
And the children were actually relocated to the Buckner home in Dallas. Mr. Buckner personally came to Galveston as soon as he could get passage after the storm had passed, and took not only the children from the Galveston Orphans Home, but children from the other orphanages on the island as well, and took them all to Dallas. And they were there for 2 years while this building was being redesigned and rebuilt, basically. It didn't come completely down. It's still the original footprint of the 1895 building. But they reinforced a lot of things to make sure that it never ever came down again. It was a different architect, and he looked at what had survived and recreated that throughout the building. And it served in the capacity of an orphanage up until the late 70s, and then became an emergency shelter and worked in that capacity until 1984, when all of the homes on the island actually consolidated into one entity. After that, it became a private residence. Somebody had filed blueprints with the city to turn it into luxury condos at one point, but thankfully their funding fell through. I can't imagine what this building would look like had they gone through with that. But yeah, there was a private residence, and then it was kind of abandoned after Hurricane Ike. The grounds had severe damage, and I think the water in the building on the ground floor had got about knee deep.
Wow.
And it's kind of sat on the market. Nobody really had a use for a building this size. And Mr. Bryan was downsizing his torch offices in Houston, which is where he had his collection on display, and decided he wanted to look at some spaces to maybe start a museum. And he had actually come out to Galveston to look at a different building. And he said that when he walked in, the water line from Ike was above his head. And he was like, nope, not happening. And they were heading towards Seawall on 21st. And he saw this place look condemned. Everything was overgrown on the grounds, but he saw the realty sign. So he called him and walked in, and he said he got about 10 steps into the foyer, looked around, and he said, this is it.
Yeah.
We'll do some paperwork. And that's how we came to be.
Well, it's so cool because oftentimes you can have a great collection and they put it in a place. Your home is one of the artifacts in a sense. And so that makes
Absolutely.
it even so much more enriching.
Yeah. People ask me all the time, what's the best artifact you have? And I say, it's the building.
Yeah.
Because it gives us such a unique opportunity to house history within history.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people appreciate that.
Yeah. Do you folks get to travel your exhibits? Have other museums borrowed collection pieces, put on displays from the Bryan Museum?
Oh, absolutely. At any given time, we probably have 20 to 50 items on loan to institutions all across the state. And we also, when we do our special exhibits, we always keep in mind, how could we package this as a traveling exhibit? Because one of the most heartbreaking things for us as a staff is when we spend all this time and energy into putting together these special exhibits, they're up for 3.5 months. And if we don't turn them into something sustainable that can travel, they're gone forever.
Yeah.
So, it's just that kind of thing. We always keep a mind to that. And if it's something that we've built with stuff from our collection, we can then turn around and package that as a traveling exhibit that can go in bulk to another museum.
Okay, here's a little bit of a fantasy question for you. So 100 years from now, somebody at the Bryan Museum wants to do Texas in the 2020s. What artifacts should they be collecting?
Oh, wow. What a great question. My gosh. You've just stumped a historian because we don't think in present term. We are living in history, yesterday's history, if you want to get technical about it. But no, I think historians moving forward are going to have a very hard time, actually, because we rely on diaries, letters, things that records that people have kept to really piece together everything. Physical artifacts are great, but if you don't know the context, it sort of gets lost in time. And we don't write letters anymore. We send emails, and we don't mail letters to our friends and family. And if we do, they certainly don't keep them. They think we're crazy that we didn't send them an email or a text message. So I think it's going to be interesting in the future, for future historians trying to piece together what you and I are living right now.
Yeah. A whole display of thumb drives really isn't going to be that exciting.
Yeah, if you even have anything to read them.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it is an amazing museum and a wonderful collection. I'm happy we had this opportunity to highlight it for a lot of folks that may not know it's out there. And for those that love it and want to hear more about the museum, it's a great place to visit. And like you said, the greatest artifact is the building alone. And it is spectacular when you go inside of it.
Yeah, and if I can add real quick.
Please do.
In addition to the orphanage exhibit on the ground floor, when people are exploring the main galleries, the Texas galleries and everything else, we have set up small stations with an audio tour and it's not a reproduction, but basically it shows what the galleries might have looked like when it was an orphanage in 1902 when it reopened.
Oh, that's
there,
cool.
There aren't any pictures, so that's why I was struggling with that word so much. It's a representation.
There we go. We found it.
So you can learn about the orphanage throughout the museum, and the audio tour doesn't address a single artifact in the museum. It's all about the experience of the kids that lived here and the people who worked here.
Well, I enjoyed this experience right now. Eric, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I had a great time.
Eric Broussard is a curator of the Bryan Museum. You can go down to Galveston and visit it. It's an awesome facility, and it really does have the history of Texas right in front of you. So go there, see it, learn from it. Okay, coming up next, we are going to get into our current obsessions. Maybe your obsession is the Bryan Museum. Call us and tell us. Send it to us, 713-440-8870. You can call or text or email them to us right now at talk@hellohouston.org. We'll be right back. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
It's not just your car. It's the one that brought your kids home from school, took you cross-country, held memories, laughter, even a few breakdowns. When it's time to let go, give your car a new purpose. Donate it and turn memories into meaningful support for this station. Plus, you'll enjoy free and easy pickup, potential tax benefits, and a simple donation process. Your gift supports the programs you and your family love. Donate today and help keep public media strong. Call or donate online.
7. On the next Radio Lab.
If someone gives you anesthesia, propofol, we've got sevoflurane, dexmedetomidine, ketamine.
Boom.
You're gone.
And then, suddenly you're back. What happens in that gap?
You'd think that something that's been around since 1846 would be hammered out, but it's still almost a philosophical kind of mystery.
Black Boxes on the next Radio Lab.
You can hear that Saturday night at 9 on News 88.7.
On Fresh Air, you'll hear conversations with entertaining people like Nancy Cartwright, the voice of Bart Simpson.
I gave him one take, one sound, one voice, and that was it. Blah, 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 blah. And Matt, his eyebrows went up, his tongue came out of his mouth. He's like, oh my God, that's him, that's Bart, that's him. You got the part.
The most interesting people in show business tell their stories on Fresh Air.
Fresh Air, weekdays at 8 p.m. on News 88.7.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Metro. Introducing the Ride Metro Fare Card. The Ride Metro Fare system replaces the Metro Q Fare Card. for bus and rail fares. Details at ridemetro.org/fare system. Support comes from Base Power. As hurricane season approaches, Base Power offers energy plans to Texans with home backup for outages and fixed energy rates. Eligibility details at basepowercompany.com/NPR.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous.
All right, it's that time to dive into our current obsessions because you know what? It's Thursday and it's the last segment of the show. Here's the rundown of things that are currently taking over all of our free time. Now, just for those of you who are the novices, a current obsession could be a TV show you run home to continue watching, a song you keep playing on repeat, an audiobook that makes you drive an extra mile in your car. You get the idea. Before we jump into our obsessions this week, one of the top trending items now on X is, believe it or not, Megan Thee Stallion will be taking over the lead role in Moulin Rouge of Ziegler in the Broadway production of it. How's that for crazy?
Whoa.
I didn't even know she could act, but that'll be it. Well, Boy George played the role, and I don't think of him as a great actor either, but he is a singer of note. Anyway, we welcome your current obsessions. Share them with us right now by calling or texting 713-440-8870. I don't have my other cohorts today. I don't have Celeste. I don't have Frank with me. So you know who I do have with me? Two of our intrepid producers. I say two like there's a dozen of them back there. The two of our intrepid producers. William, Garrett, welcome to the program.
Whole team. And Jim.
Thanks.
And Jim.
And Jim.
And Jim. Jim's over there on his mic.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, Jim couldn't do without Jim.
Yeah, he can't seem to figure out how to make his mic work. There's our executive producer showing you what he can do. Okay, so current obsession-wise, we had some coming in. One that I liked was from, where is it? It is, I don't even know, Control-Alt-Bleach. They said they've been obsessed with Brian Wilson's Smile album since he passed, which I thought was an interesting. I hadn't thought about that album in a while. And
The Lost Album.
Yes. Yeah. Quite an interesting piece of work.
That's a great one.
Okay, you're talking, William. You're a musician. Your music is your life, but is your current obsession music?
Actually, it is. It might be. I was thinking about this. I went to the Rockets game last night. They played the Sacramento Kings, and the Prairie View A&M marching band performed during the halftime performance. So it was great. They were fantastic. They were really good. Tons of choreographed moves. The music was great. It was really fun. So I would say the Prairie View A&M marching band is my obsession this week, along with the Rockets. But that's kind of a year-round obsession. So
I will tell you though, marching bands. There's the Excitement of Sound. I don't know if it still comes here. It used to come every summer, and that was like the marching band championships. Oh my God, I would go every year. It was like in July or something in an outdoor stadium. So all my friends hated me for wanting to go. But oh my God, I love a marching band. Did they make some cool shapes?
Oh, that was the best part.
Yeah.
The shapes, the shapes, the choreography, how they stepped around and flowed into these different patterns. Oh, it was fantastic. Along with the music. The music was very good.
The music is just like, and there's something unique about a marching band sound. You don't get it from anything else. And hearing it live is how you have to do it.
Oh, it was great.
Okay, Garrett. I know you're obsessed with movies. That's what you love. So is a movie your obsession this week?
Actually, it's a TV show.
Ooh, what is it?
It's Severance. I finally checked it out, and I can see why everybody loves it. It's really that great. It starts off kind of slow, but once you get past the first few episodes, you just really get hooked into the mystery of it.
And there's something fascinating in that too. And of course, Severance, a lot of people absolutely love that show. I am one of those that hasn't gotten hooked into it yet. Okay. But you make an interesting point, the idea about it starts off slow. In my day, back when I was a child, you couldn't do a television show that didn't start with a bang immediately so that people would jump in. But it seems as though today people will allow for a slow burn to get going. And I think we've seen a lot of shows where we might have been written off because the first couple episodes didn't catch you right away. But if you stay with them, they do. So now I think that's become a viewing habit. Do you guys agree? Disagree?
I don't watch a whole lot of TV, if I'm being, or at least modern like
if a marching band starts slow, will you still listen for them?
Yeah, it's like an orchestra, An orchestra starts slow and soft, and eventually, it's a wave of loudness and a wall of sound that comes your way. So yeah, no, a slow burn is nice.
Garrett, for you, a slow burn? Can you? I mean, you did with Severance, but traditionally, would you stick with something, or you're like, no, I'm moving on?
These days, it does it does have to start with a big bang for me to kind of get interested. That being said, if I will, for a show like Severance that I know is going to be worth it, I will, just hang on until that mystery really kicks in, or until I really see what people are talking about, why it's so good.
I need to watch the show. It's another one that I'm like, I don't watch much, modern day television, but that's one that it's really, and I like Ben Stiller. I like him as a director. Writer-director, I like his work behind the camera as much as I like his work in front of it. And I need to check out the stuff. Adam Scott too is great. So
713-440-8870. You've heard a couple of our obsessions. What are yours? Let's go to Roberto from the Museum District. Roberto, what's on your mind? Are you there?
I'll be real quick. Can you hear me?
I can now. Yes.
Okay. Ernie, I'm going to give you a pop quiz. Did you hear Entertainment Tonight last night?
No. But I may know the answer still. What's the question?
Okay. Who famous person, you know her, I know you do, is turning 80 very soon, and she's not too happy about it?
Well, Cher, Dolly Parton, a whole bunch of them are. It's a very bizarre thing to see how many pop icons are turning 80.
Dolly Parton, you're right, but no, that's not the one.
Which one?
Liza Minnelli.
Oh, and Liza, yes, she's got a new autobiography out.
And she's not happy about the way Lady Gaga treated her.
Oh, I remember that scandal when it happened.
Yeah. So one more thing, and then I'll get to my two obsessions real quick.
Okay.
Do you know Tommy Tune?
Yes.
Tell him, first time for me to see The Boyfriend on TV.
Uh-huh.
I'm so impressed with him. Tell him, for me, it's the first time. He was great.
Well, when I say I know him very peripherally. I don't think he knows me. Let's put it that way. But next time I'm in his orbit, I will mention it.
Okay. He was great.
Yes.
Okay. Now, my two obsessions real quick. I'm a serious guy. So my serious obsessions, my country, our country, is just, it can't get worse. It's getting worse. And the second thing is the children in Gaza and how they're being neglected by us and the world. And I'm hoping that will be resolved very soon, because the children, as we know, are completely innocent as to what happened, what the adults have done. So, and then what's his name? Our secretary, or ambassador to Israel, Huckabee, announced yesterday, you may not have heard, that those dual citizen American and Israeli citizens that hold, both
dual citizenship,
if they settle in Gaza, not Gaza, West Bank, they will be given passports indicating that's where they reside. That's recognizing the West Bank as Israeli territory. That's the latest on that one. So anyway,
Roberto, you've got a lot of obsessions. Thank you for sharing them with me.
Two of them. Thank you.
But I also want to say, to your point about how things may seem dire right now, I subscribe to the pendulum theory that when you go too far to one way, eventually you swing back to the middle. Of course, then you tend to swing the other way too, but we keep finding the center, and I hope we find the center again, and I hope we find it soon. Thank you very much, Roberto, for calling in. Speaking of slow burns and our obsessions, my obsession right now did not have a slow burn when it started, but it's had a very slow length of life. It's Survivor, and it turned 50. Okay. Well, actually 25, but 50 seasons. They do 2 a year. Last night, I was obsessed with it when it first came out, before you guys were born.
No. I remember when it premiered when I was
don't do that to me.
Years old.
Do you know who Richard Hatch is? See, that tells you your age right there.
Is
You
he
knew
the
who
first? That the first winner?
winner?
Yeah, it's the first
Went
winner.
on to have quite a scandalous career. But anyway, those were our obsessions. A lot came in I didn't get a chance to read. I apologize for that. Thank you all for listening. HBCU marching band just hit different. That's what Sean says.
Oh,
There's
absolutely.
a whole lot of other things. And someone is asking, no spoilers, Ernie. Come on, I'm giving you a spoiler from 25 years ago. I'm allowed. Okay, there you go. That takes us to the end of the show today. We will be back again tomorrow. Thank you for listening to Hello Houston. Frank Celeste will rejoin me, as will Baker Institute's Tony Payan, who will be talking about Mexico's current situation with cartels. That is right here on Hello Houston on News 88.7. See you tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altine, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
I'm Stephen Dubner, host of Freakonomics Radio. Every week, Freakonomics Radio explores the hidden side of, well,